Hey everybody, this is Dan Keldsen with NextFutureToday, and my guest for this episode is Linda Popky. We talked about her book, Marketing Above the Noise, which, as you might guess, is all about the stuff that you shouldn't do and the things that you should do, like getting back to the basics of marketing. What are the basics? You're going to have to listen to the episode. But she had a lot of examples of what they are and what could we be doing better. How does this stretch back to the beginning of human history and how that changed from then to now, which is actually a lot more tied together than you might have initially thought. And what happens with the new greatest thing from TikTok or YouTube Shorts or Instagram or Threads or any number of things. Are they flash in the pan? Should you spend a lot of time and money and effort on them? Very situational. We talk a lot about that. And a lot of little nuances about how you go to market with partners and alliances and tell this joint story or not of your relationship with a partner. So if you're into B2B marketing specifically, this is a really good episode for you. If you're into B2C marketing, still relevant, maybe not as directly relevant, but I'll let you be the judge. Let's go. Linda, so welcome to Next Future Today. Thank you for making time to speak with me about the past of marketing, the future marketing, and how to do it well. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So in your 2015 book, which is Marketing Above the Noise, turns out we were published with the same publisher, Bibliomotions, and that they don't exist anymore, the nature of the publishing business. So you talk about a return to the basics of marketing and not necessarily chasing the next new thing, which there's probably 1,000 things that just happened today that we talk about, but we're not going to do that. So what are the basics of marketing? Because for me, I know that I've played the role of being in marketing and I have my own company, so you have to do your own marketing. But it doesn't seem like people always want to do the fundamentals of marketing. But what are those fundamentals? What's the basics that they should really still be paying attention to?
Well, if you think about, let's go back thousands of years before all this technology, and we were pretty much an agrarian society, and say you had some cows, and from that you got milk and cheese and butter, and I had crops, and I produced some corn or wheat or soy or something. We came together at a prescribed time in what we called the market, which was the town square, and you had your cheese, I had my grains, somebody else had something else, your fruits and vegetables and whatever. And we all came together and we decided what we wanted. Now, what happened in those days, we didn't have refrigeration, so you couldn't show up with a humongous container of milk because it would go bad. You had to give me a small thing of milk or your cheese, maybe more cheese because that lasted longer. I could not show up with grain if I didn't know that someone wanted to have that. So the basics about, I had to be there the right day. If the market was on Thursday and I showed up on Friday, you're not going to be there to talk to. I had to have the right product that people wanted. I had to have it at the right price, which might be, 3 things of cheese for 2 bushels of grain, but I couldn't ask you for 10 pieces of cheese because that just was unreasonable. So I had to be in the right place at the right time with the right price, and I had to know my customer. And all of those things, if we fast forward to today, all those things are still true. You need to be there, the right name, the right price, the right product, all of those things. The difference is our market now is global, and we do a lot of things online, and we have all these tools to assist us. Now we have AI, which is everybody's all excited about. But the bottom line is, if you don't know who your customer is, and you don't have the right message to reach them, and you don't show up in the right place with the right product, then you can spend an awful lot of time and money and get nowhere. And so those are the basics, and it sounds so basic that why aren't people doing this? But we see this all the time where you're saying, what were they thinking when they created that product? Or what were they thinking with that message? It's so far off base because they didn't stop and think about their customer. Very often with technology, we create something because we have all of these gee whiz features and bells and whistles and whatever. So let's throw that out there and let's see if it sticks against the wall. But it's not necessarily what people want and what people need and what they think they want, what they perceive they want, and therefore it doesn't succeed.
Yeah, so one book that's always stuck with me is Claude Hopkins' Direct Advertising, which came out 100 years ago in the 1920s, which is like the birth of, direct marketing and measuring, that was probably before 800 numbers, but, right back to this P.O. box number. And because you went to that one, we know that's ad A, and the other, post office box number 3 is ad B, and, all that kind of stuff. But so A/B testing, sort of one of the cores of marketing, doesn't always get done. Like email marketing is often, we just got to blast out our email and we haven't targeted anybody. We're not testing headlines or the body or images or the offer or whatever. So if hopefully people listening have gotten from the thousands of years ago to closer to modern days, but we're still not necessarily measuring correctly. Why do you think that is? It seems like we're afraid to treat marketing with any sort of science and just want to go by the gut.
Well, I mean, there is something to be said about all these stories we hear about your gut, whether you're Steve Jobs or you're Elon Musk or whatever, and you have this gut feeling, you go with it. But the bottom line is, more often than not, we hear about them because they're exceptions, and more often than not in day-to-day business, you need to understand who your customers are. And sometimes businesses think they know more about their customers than their customers do. So I know what you want. I know who you are. I know what you want. So I'm just going to give it to you. And I'm afraid to ask. Either I'm afraid to ask or I don't want to ask, or I've decided that I know what I want to build and I'm just going to go build it anyway. And so I don't do the A/B testing. And it's even sadder today because it's so easy to do that. The tools exist. We don't have to create these post office boxes and wait for the Pony Express to show up with the mail back, right? We can test it very easily, and we don't. And so therefore, that becomes a problem. The other problem, though, is we get so stuck on metrics that we're measuring the wrong things. So we're measuring the number of likes, we're measuring the number of followers, we're measuring, if people are still using Twitter, or I guess now called X, we're measuring the number of, people who have tweeted and followed and whatever and liked it. And the metrics are not necessarily moving the needle. So there are metrics that we have people that are clicking on it, et cetera, who may not even be people. They may be bots, right? Very often they're bots. But they don't tell us that anything's going to change. And so when we follow those metrics and we say, I've got more followers than anybody else, I've got more this than that and whatever, what's your bottom line like? Are you selling product? Are people coming back? Right? Because you got to make people aware of your product, then they have to try it, then they buy it, and then you're not done. Then you have to build loyalty. So you want people to create preference that says, I would rather have your product rather than someone else's, given a choice. And then we have the loyalty, which is when Apple introduces a new product and you see, and I don't know if it's happened post-pandemic, but it used to be there were lines around an Apple store for hours to get something. And if you've ever gone into an Apple, to people that have a lot of Apple devices and say, I will give you an Android and I'll pay you money, give me your iPhone. No. I mean, they look at you like you're crazy. That's the kind of loyalty you want. And you don't get there by pretending that you know what the customer wants. You've got to be able to watch and you've got to be able to monitor, which we have the tools to do. We just don't often do it enough.
So your book came out in 2015. Obviously, a ton of things have changed, like a pandemic. Who saw that coming? Twitter turning into X, TikTok, I don't think was a thing then. Maybe it was, but it was certainly very early. iOS updates that have screwed up marketing, tracking, all sorts of fun stuff. So there's even more choices that people have now for marketing channels and types of media. At the heart of your book is, don't create noise. Don't be part of the noise. What's the point of doing that? So how do you help people really hone in so that they know specifically when they're producing noise or when they're producing signal, I suppose it's called, and stop trying to chase the latest shiny thing? I mean, it's not that you should ignore it. Like, I'm still not quite sure of the business potential of TikTok myself, but I haven't really tried it to test it. So what do you think about, all these things that are blasted as potential venues, but what's appropriate?
Well, I think one of the things we have to be careful about is jumping on every bandwagon that comes down the road. And my book actually talks about something called Second Life, which most people probably don't even remember. But Second Life was going to take over our world. We were going to live with these avatars in this virtual world. And, and you ask anyone under the age of 40 probably has no idea what that was, right? And I think, we've looked at There was, now I can't remember it, there was some kind of audio program that everybody was going to get together and have these conversations, and you could all jump in, and that came and went. And Google has something, has had a couple of things that came and went. And then Facebook has Threads, I think, which is their version of trying to do TikTok or something, and that may or may not stay. So I'm all for checking things out, but you need to go back to the basics, and you need to go where your customers are. So don't ask them to come to you. If your customers are on TikTok, if they're that demographic is on TikTok, then maybe you need to be there. But are they there for your product and service, or are they there because they want to talk about, whatever dance move they have and cool stuff they're doing? So they need to be there, and they need to be ready to hear you. And there's two types of noise one is the noise in the market. And that's, if you're my customer, there are things that have happened to you today that are getting in the way of you hearing my message. You may have had a bad day. Your kids are sick. Your car broke down. You're afraid of losing your job. There's all kinds of things going on. You may have competitors, or they're competitors to me, and that's noise getting in the way. So all those things are in the way of you hearing my message. And then if I'm in an organization, there's noise within there. That's external noise. But within the organization, there's internal noise, which is how we sort of get in our own way, and we can't get the message out. And how many times have we seen where we say about an organization, what are they doing? That makes no sense. Why can they not let people know what's really going on? And that's the internal noise. So that's the stuff you have total control over, which is you don't have marketing and sales saying different things, and then service can't service it or can't make it, and and all that kind of stuff that gets in the way. You don't have people kind of coming up with things that they can't follow through on. So you can get out of your own way in that. When it comes to the external noise, you can't. If we were in this large cocktail party, 1,000 people, pretend it's pre-pandemic, 1,000 people at a conference, and everybody's talking at once, there's a ton of noise. So your first reaction is, I'm going to speak louder and slower. And what that does is it adds to the noise level. Now, you may be able to hear me because you're close, but you're straining to hear me and I'm straining to talk, and that's not going to last very long. And it does scale. So what you have to do is get out of that room where everybody's trying to talk at once, and you need to go somewhere where you can be heard. So you need to zig where other people are zagging. And if everybody else is talking about this AI tool and this and whatever, maybe you talk about how you actually do things with human beings, and you get through something, that's you get a personal touch that isn't coming through, that you don't have to worry about whether a tool is hallucinating and you're dealing with the chat bot that's give you the wrong answers. Now, I just made that up, but that's an example of how you kind of go somewhere else. And a lot of what I find is important is the content that you create, right? Because what you say and what you do, and there's all kinds of other pieces of marketing. But if we don't get the message right and get the message out there, then you can have the prettiest website, you can have the nicest, products and great, signage in your store if you're in retail. And if the message isn't right, it doesn't matter. So we've got to start with that, and we've got to make sure that we do that. And if we do it right, then we get attention and we get people to try. And then from that point on, marketing opens the door, sales closes it, right? So sales has to come in, and and you've got to have a good product. The worst thing you can do is get people really, really in and the product doesn't deliver. It's like, well, okay, I'm done with that. So, but presuming you have a good product, presuming you have people who can then close the sale, what marketing does is open the door and say, tell me more. That's really interesting. Tell me more. And that's what we need to do.
As far as, just from a marketing standpoint, how do B2B marketers get the material that will help them to talk in the right place, in the right channel, the medium, with the right message, the pain points or the opportunities or whatever it is that they're going to do? Where do they get that other than just making it up, which they seem to largely make up?
They seem to do it, but the simplest thing is go ask your customers. You have customers. If you're not a brand new startup and you have customers, there are people paying for your product. They like you. The best thing you can do is say, hey, I want to get even better. Dan, talk to me. Tell me what you like about the product. Tell me what I can do better. Now, all of a sudden, you feel empowered. You're listening to me. You're asking my opinion. And then you can't just take my input and say, nice to see you, and that's it. You've got to follow up and say, I appreciate it. Here's what we're doing with it. We can't give you 54 new features at zero cost, but we're taking your input on the features and we're trying to figure out how to do them in a cost-effective manner. So it's not that you have to take every piece of input, but ask your customers. If you're working in a partner business, ask your partners. You've got to talk to the people that are closest to the customers and prospects. And you even look at what your competition is doing. If your competition is making money, and there's nothing wrong with competition, they actually help you in many ways. What are they doing right? What are they doing that you could learn from? So all of those types of things, ask your customers, ask your partners, look at what the competition is doing, look at the people who aren't being served, look at people who are using a different type of solution. So if we're talking about transportation and you're selling one car and I'm selling another, that's one part of competition. But the other competition is people taking public transportation, people walking, people who are bicycling, people are, so there's other ways, people who aren't going out anymore because they're working at home. So all of these things you need to look at and say, and we have great ways of getting input today. People are very willing to tell you. You need to be careful about going on to a bulletin board or something where people are just ragging on something, because you will get the people who are most happy and the people who are most upset. And especially the people who are most upset will love to tell you how terrible you are. And a complaint is a gift in this sense that it allows you to fix something, but you don't want to spend all your time sucked into that realm where everybody's just there to talk about how bad things are. But you want to go out to the people who love you and say, what can we do better? And keep doing it. And then bring your engineers, bring your salespeople, salespeople are there, bring the marketing people, bring the manufacturing people, bring them to the customer and say, listen to them. They know what they're talking about. They're the ones that are holding the money here. So see what they're saying.
Recent interviewees that I've had talking about storytelling from a business standpoint, often from a marketing standpoint. It could be sales, keynotes, who knows. It seems like as much as people talk about it, that's kind of a weak skill for marketers. You might tell a story of like a case study where Bob in this company decided to use that product and then mashed it up with that, and life is great. That's not exciting. Nobody's going to retell that story. Any tips on how to think about, like, since we were just talking about partnerships, thinking about the stories that you might tell with a partner that is something that would stand above the noise that everybody else who does a billion case study and white papers?
Well, I think the key point is it's always about the customer. And again, if you're selling to the partner and the customer together, it's not about you. No one wants to hear about me, the manufacturer, the OEM, whoever I am, because the only reason I'm even talking to you is because you have something that's going to help my life better. So the story has to be about how you can make my life better as a customer and as a partner. And if you're selling with a partner, how the combination of you and the partner will make the customer's life better. And it has to be something, even if you're a B2B, manufacturer, whatever, and you're in some kind of bowels of an organization, you're never selling to an organization. You're always selling to an individual. So what does this mean to them? Are they trying to get promoted? Have they been having problems that, the boss is on their back? Is there, potential reduction in force and they're going to have to find a way to be more productive? Do they need to, to add capacity and they need to do it more effectively? Whatever it is, find out what their personal motivation is and tell them the story about how you can help them. Or, we had someone just like you and they were in this situation and this and that and whatever. And here's how we were able to get them from A to B. And we think that might be something that'd be valuable to you. So the story is always the story of how you can help a customer be better and help them succeed, not how great you are.
Are there any new techniques or platforms or that you think have changed in the last years for you to tap into the combined of you and your partners, like beyond just the event might show up for an event? Are there other approaches that you've seen be useful to tap into a community and use that as part of your sort of, inadvertent or not directly paid partnerships, essentially?
My projection is what I've seen. I don't think those old conferences are coming back the way they were. I mean, I'm not saying that they're all going to go away, but if you've been around as long as you remember Comdex, which was the big trade show in Las Vegas forever until it wasn't. So, we still have the Consumer Electronics Show. We still have other things that are going on, but we're not going to get. People are no longer going to pay to send thousands of people to Las Vegas or Orlando or Barcelona for the mobile electronic, show like they did years ago. So that has kind of gone away in terms of being your number one place. During the pandemic, we had all these webinars and virtual events, etc. Then we kind of hit a point where people got Zoom fatigue, or I can't sit and watch things anymore. But we do have platforms, and we do have into to Reddit, to all of these other places where people come together and talk. And I think one of the things that's come out of the pandemic is we realize that you don't all have to be sitting around the same physical table in a physical space. And we can get people together. We can have a conversation with somebody from Asia and somebody from Europe and somebody from India and somebody from the US. And we can, whether we have it together or we have it asynchronously, we can do that. So rather than, I'm not going to predict which platform is going to survive that, because I think they change almost on a daily basis. But I do think that we have tools that allow you to do that. And then we have to, beyond that, is there still going to be room for people to get together physically? Absolutely. People like to do that. We're human beings who want to have connection. But I think we're going to have this hybrid sense of we can do some things together. And once we've met, then we're going to spend more time in virtual events and places, et cetera. Before the pandemic, there were whole entire industries that said we cannot work remotely. We have my daughter is involved in Hollywood post-production, and until March of 2020, you could not send Hollywood assets back and forth over the internet because it wasn't safe. And it was like, no. And then came the pandemic, and it was like, well, this isn't going to go away in a week. So therefore, we have to find a way. And guess what? They figured out how to do it. So all these things that you couldn't do before, you couldn't have fancy restaurants did not do top, right? Until they had to. And some of them don't. But there's a way of kind of figuring out what the right kind of venue is today. And again, I think you need to go back and say, who do I want to talk to and what's the best way to reach them? And so some of that is going to be in person, but I don't think we're going to go back to the big conferences and shows and events and all that. I think there'll be some of those, they'll be scaled down, but I do think there will be, they're forming. Some of them meet in person, some of them meet virtually, some of them meet as a hybrid type of thing. And you just need to go there and you need to listen. And again, not be talking, not be presenting, but listening and providing value. So if you're creating content, you want to create content that's educational, that's informative, that's helpful, and you want to get that out there so that people are finding you, because more and more of the sales process is happening before your salesperson gets a phone call that says, or a text or an email that says, hey, I want to buy this. You've done all the research, you've been online, you've looked at the videos. Everything is mobile. People are holding this device in their hands and they're, and that's where they're going. They're not carrying their laptop or a desktop computer around, but they're sitting in their car or on a train or something and saying, wonder about this, wonder about that. So you need to make sure that whatever you create in terms of messaging is highly accessible via mobile device and easy to get to, which means you've got to make it shorter, you've got to make it sweeter. You've got to make sure if you're going to do video that it's vertical, because people are going to watch it on their phone. So all of those little things that make it easier for me to engage with you.
Well, so and you anticipated where I was going again. So it's like I read your book, and
there you go.
So as far as creating content, these days, it's really like snack-sized content. Very, very small. I was sitting in a webinar. It was a hybrid event actually, but I was remote, so I had to go in. The CMO for Visa was talking, and I don't know where he got the stat from, but universally, it doesn't matter what age you are, our attention span for us to be engaged is about 8 seconds. So it's not right. Just the young kids and their short attention span, which ties to our book that came out, yours, The Gen Z Effect. But you can't just take what you used in it to say and chop it into 30 seconds. So, and how do you crush one message down to a 30-second TikTok video, or do you split into pieces, or use a carousel threads approach? The specifics don't matter, but conceptually, how do you take something that used to be acceptable 5, 10, 20, 30, 60 minutes to go through, and really, I'll just say nuggetize it.
No, I think he's absolutely right, because I haven't looked at the stats lately, but if you look at, go watch TV, the old-fashioned stuff in the streaming kind. In the old days, we used to have 60-second commercials. The only place you'll see a 60-second commercial today is at the Super Bowl, where it costs $1 trillion. And it's like the Budweiser horses are clomping along and they're setting the stage and whatever. Even at the Super Bowl, it's 30 seconds. But if you take your phone and time a commercial that you see, they're very often 5, 10, 15 seconds. They're very rarely more than 20 or 30, because our attention span is shorter. So we can't take the time to do setup, and we can't take the time to do all that. So you've got to get people's attention quickly, which means that you can't tell multiple messages. And you want to get to the most important point, and then tell me how I find out more. And then, then you can click on it, and then you can send me to a website or somewhere where I can find out more. And that can be a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but it's not going to be 60 minutes.
Right.
Because nobody has the patience for that. The other thing that's interesting, and when I got my a Plexicam using, there were no instructions in the box. There was a QR code, and I had to go to a video. And the video was about 40 seconds long, maybe a minute. It's no longer than a minute. And that's all that people have attention for.
Right.
You buy a refrigerator today, and you get a QR code, and it takes you to videos about how you use the ice maker.
Right.
So this idea of sending people a manual and they're going to spend time reading it, gone.
Right.
So you have got to, people just do not have an attention span, and you've got to get to the message quickly. So I would say you need to really pare down your messages, be very clear about what you want to say. And then if you have 5 things you really need to say, it's 5 different spots. It's 5 different places. Don't try to get them in there so fast, talking so fast that I can't.
Yeah, I can't even fake that. A lot of marketers that I worked with is that repetition is a thing, and it's your friend, as long as your message isn't just wrong. So, I mean, but in the age of, in the spirit of testing things, so maybe I haven't done this myself. It seems like too much work, frankly. But, you could test like 5 versions of a TikTok video or a YouTube short or whatever that essentially say the same thing, but take a different approach on like the opener or the thumbnail for the, to stop the scroll. Is that, I think there's still, that's some of those basics that seems to get tossed away when like a company jumps into TikTok and they want to just make it into a corporate commercial, and it seems like they kind of don't even care what it is. What the hell's going on?
I think a lot of that stuff, you're going, what are they doing? Do they belong here? Yeah. Regardless of what your politics are, Biden jumped into TikTok, I think, around the Super Bowl, and it was like, what is he doing? He just didn't look like he fit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying that politicians shouldn't be on TikTok, but you need to understand, he was trying to be cool and whatever. He's 81 years old. Now, does that mean he should not be president? I'm not going to go there. But it means that you're not going to, you can't pretend you're 25.
Right.
So you have to make sure, and companies do that too. They do that a lot. And like, well, what are they doing there? That makes no sense. Yeah. So you need to really, and I do think testing is important, but you can get so tied up in testing, and this one got 3.1 and that one got 6.2 and that one got 3.7, and so we don't get anywhere. We get into analysis paralysis. So I think you test things a little bit and you try them. Yep. And when you find something that seems to be catching on, then you go on from there, you add on there. But don't test till you're blue in the face, because you will never get out of the testing mode. Yeah. But on the other hand, we remember the Geico Gecko, 15 minutes will save you 15% on car insurance. Yeah. Why? Because we've heard it a million times. Right. Right? So, so there's the types of things, State Farm, Jake from State Farm, we hear that. So, to use some of those. Then Liberty Mutual now has the emu, thing, whatever. So, so they've and that's, insurance is a category that really, number one, there's not a lot of differentiation. Yeah. And number two, it's kind of boring. Yeah. Number three, nobody wants to buy it, but they feel like they have to. So what are they doing? They're making you entertaining, and they're trying to get you to remember things, and they're doing it by repetition. Right. So the more you can be humorous, but you need to be very careful about humor, that it's not deprecating anyone. It's okay to a certain degree, but you need to be very careful. To not go out too far, or we get people that are upset about this and that and the other thing. Yeah. But yeah, you need to kind of entertained. Yeah. And you need to do it in a way that's tasteful.
Yeah. So we're getting to the end of the hour here. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't already covered?
Yeah, one of the things that I'm doing a lot of lately, which I encourage if you're in an organization as an executive leading a team, or if you're an entrepreneur, is I'm helping authors, individuals, and organizations get heard above the noise by getting their content out there. And very often it's by creating and writing and producing a book. And the good news is we have lots of tools to do that today. The bad news is there are a ton of books out there, so you can't expect to be the next Dan Pink or J.K. Rowling or whatever. A book gives you a credibility, and it gives you something that even in today's world, Amazon is still selling millions of books a year. So in there, and you can do ebooks and audiobooks too, but people still like printed books. And so one of the things that I think is important is if you have a story to tell, and sometimes it's because you have something you want to get across. Very often I work with authors that want to give something back and they want to teach people what they've learned. Or I work with authors that have, here's a really key thing I want you to understand. This is very important. It's about climate change. It's about social action. It's about, how businesses are run, whatever it is, leadership, teams, innovation. Get out there and you can produce this. Yeah, you can go through commercial publishers, but there are other alternatives too. The good news is we have very good technology today for print on demand, for working with hybrid publishers, people like me that help you get that together. So if you do have, a story that you want to tell, you want to get out there, I encourage you to, and you don't even have to be able to say you're a good writer, because we can work with you. And if you can talk me through it and we get the arc of what you want to say, we can help you create that story and get it out there and have that credibility to help your business.
So one of the wrap up I like to ask is, what is something that anybody listening today could do today that would help them create their next future today? And any topic, probably marketing, but any way you want to go with it.
So how do you create your next future today? I think you think about where you want to be and where you are today, and what do I need to get there? Because if you do the same thing today that you've been doing last week and the week before and the week before that, you're going to be, in a year or 2 years, you're going to be a year or two older and in the same place.
Okay, great. Well, Linda, thank you so much for making time to have this chat. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
I love to tap experts so that I can learn and hopefully the audience can learn, and we will create our next future today. So thank you very much.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Dan.